All right, so chapter 10, lesson 4 is multi-step measurement problems. So what I'm going to do is I have about 4 or 5 word problems that I want to go through, and these should be the same ones that you're going to be doing on Think Central. I highly suggest you put these in your notes so you can refer back to them. Many of these problems are 2 to 3 steps of converting measurements. So you're going to need to make sure you have your chart out with our conversions, and we're going to be mixing them all up together. So the first problem is a science teacher needs to collect lake water for a lab. The lab requires each student to use 4 fluid ounces of lake water. If 68 students are participating, how many pints of lake water will the teacher need to collect? So the first step is to find out how many total ounces the teacher is going to need. So if I have 68 students and I'm timesing that by 4 ounces each, we're going to multiply to find out our total ounces. And we get 272 ounces that the teacher needs to collect. Now I need to change my ounces to pints because the question is asking how many pints will I need. Now we have to remember our lesson of gallon man and know that I'm thinking of like an arm of gallon person, not man, person, and 1 pint had 2 cups in it. Well, 1 cup is 8 ounces, so 2 cups are going to be 16 ounces. So I know that 1 pint equals 16 ounces. So 1 pint equals 16 ounces. And if you so I'm taking ounces, which is a smaller unit, and I'm bringing it to a bigger unit, which means I'm going to divide. So my first step was multiplying to get my total ounces. My second step is now going to be dividing. I'm going to do that over here so I have more room. So I have 16 ounces divided by 272 ounces. Well, I know that 16 times 2 is 32, so that can only go into 27 one time, which is 16. I subtract, I get 1, I get 1, that's 11. 16 can't go into 11, I bring down the 2, and I could figure out my facts of 16 to figure out how many times 16 can go into 112. The 2 in the ones place with the 6, I kind of just need to know that like 6 times 2 is 12, and I'm thinking of 6 times 7 is 42, and that would give me a 2 in the ones place. I'm kind of just using my estimating and my facts to find the number that will fit the best, and boom, shaka-laka laka boom, what do you know? It's 17. So what does 17 mean? It means that the teacher needs to collect 17 pints of lake water. All right, our next problem. 9, I didn't forget you. Here's your word problem. When Nine's car moves forward such that each tire makes 1 full rotation, and rotation, if we're unfamiliar, is the tire making 1 full turnaround. It's like a full 360. The car has traveled 72 inches. So 1 rotation is 72 inches. How many rotations will the tire make before the car's traveled 10 yards? So we have inches to yards, but we also have another part of the problem, which is figuring out how many rotations it takes me to 10 yards. So the first thing we need to do is we need to change the 1 rotation of 72 inches into yards. Now, the conversion unit that I'm going to use here is I'm going to take this like inches to feet and then feet to yards. So, let me fix that. Next, we have, I think this is one of the second to last problems on Think Central. And as you can tell, it's a very long problem, but once we break it down, it's actually not that bad. So at an animal shelter, there are 12 small dogs and 5 medium-sized dogs. Each day, the small dogs eat 12.5 ounces, or 12 and 5/10 ounces, of dry food, and the medium-sized dogs eat 18 ounces of dry food. How many pounds of dry food does the shelter serve in one day? So I could see that I'm taking ounces and I'm changing it into pounds. But we have many different types of ounces. So I broke down the steps of this problem for us to do one by one. So the first step is to find the total ounces for the small dogs. So my small perritos are 12 small dogs, and they eat 12 and a half each day. The small dogs eat 12.5 ounces of dry food. And actually, I probably wrote this wrong because each dog eats 12.5 ounces of dry dog food. So I think on Think Central I copied this problem wrong. It says that each day the small dogs eat 12.5 ounces of dry food. I think that's supposed to be each. So they each eat this. So my correction. If you're having your book out, this is number 10 in the book or number 10 on Think Central. So if you want to copy it correctly, this problem may come back, or most likely will come back for your test. So I have 12 and a half times 12. And remember, when we multiply decimals, we don't worry about the decimal at all. We just multiply through. So I'm going to multiply through. Remember my placeholder. And I have one number behind the decimal, and I don't need that extra placeholder for the tens place once I added my decimal. So really, the small dogs eat 150 ounces of food each day. Now I'm going to go to my medium-sized dogs, and the medium-sized dog steps 2. There are 5 of them, and they each eat 18 ounces of dog food. Again, I didn't write that problem out correctly. My apologies. And that is 90. So the medium-sized dogs eat 90 ounces of food. So the third step is to find the total ounces of food that the shelter... Oops, that says 9. Is to find the total ounces that the dogs are eating altogether. So I'm going to combine them, and 150 plus 90 is 240 ounces. So the total is 240 ounces of dry food that the shelter goes through. Now it's asking us how many pounds of food they go through. Well, we have to remember our conversion. And the conversion was that 1 pound equals 16 ounces. Now, I have a small unit of measure, and I'm going to a larger unit of measure. So I'm going to divide. And I'm going to divide 16. I'm going to put a little 4 here, so you know this is step 4. 16 into 240. And 16 can go into 24 one time. And when I subtract, I get 8 and 80, and I have a 0 in the ones place, and I know that 6 times 5 would give me a 0 in the ones place. So I'm guesstimating that 5 is going to work, which is 30, and then carry the 3, and 5 times plus 3 is 8. And that gives me nothing left over. So I get 15. What is 15? 15 is me converting the ounces to pounds. So the dog shelter 15 pounds of food a day. And hopefully my stylus comes from Amazon Prime tomorrow so that I can print clearly on this thing. Alright, last problem. Tia's turn. Alright, Tia is painting, his house. Correction. Tia is painting her house. Okay, sorry about that, Tia. I had to fix all the corrections. I copied and pasted that problem wrong. Tia is painting her house. She uses 2 quarts of paint per hour. Tia paints for 8 hours. How many gallons of paint did she use? So we have quarts and we have time. Don't think about the time. Just know that this is a problem that's taking us from quarts to gallons. So I'm going to first write down the information. And Tia goes through 2 quarts every hour. And there are 8 hours of painting. So the first thing I'm going to think of is how many quarts do I use in 8 hours? So the first step is the number of quarts for 8 hours. And we can multiply that. And 2 times 8 is 16. So I have 16 quarts that I go through in 8 hours. Now I need to figure out how many gallons that is. Well, let's think of gallon person. 1 gallon. 1 gallon equals 4 quarts. Because there was 2 arms and 2 legs, so that's 4 quarts. So if I have 16 quarts, I'm going to divide, because I'm taking a smaller unit of measure and going to a larger unit of measure. So I'm going to take 16 quarts and I'm going to divide it by 4 quarts. And that is a mental math fact, so I'm not really going to divide it out. And I get 4 gallons of paint. So Miss Tia goes through 4 gallons of paint in 8 hours painting the house. I would make sure you have these sample problems in your notes. And the number 10 was from the workbook page, or it's from Think Central, so you could copy that problem down if I wrote it wrong. But I really suggest you look at these steps. Almost all of them are going to be 2-step. The homework, all of them will be 2-step. So make sure you're showing your work and showing you're going from 1 unit of measure to another unit of measure. And really paying attention that when you're writing the numbers out, you're just not putting the numbers, but you're really also putting the units of measure so we can keep track of them. All right, so Think Central 10.4 and then 10.4 homework page.